Thank you so much for attending our cybersecurity presentation that is going to be conducted by Eric Posa. Eric is the head CEO, president of Copeland Technology, which has been our IT vendor, the Med Society of Erie County's IT vendor, for some 7 years now. And just in light of the fact that telehealth is here to stay, we really understand the relevance and the significance of cybersecurity in this space, especially in light of the current global climate. So without further delay, I will relay this to Eric for him to start off with his presentation. And we have recorded this today so that we would be able to offer it in an asynchronous manner and provide it via an email blast to our members. So thank you, Eric, for being here today, and I'll let you start.
Are you able to see my screen okay, the presentation window? All right, fantastic. Start with the tech guy. Just to start off, again, thank you for the introduction. Medical Society of Erie County, myself, and the company have been working together for a very long time. It's been a great relationship. We love what the group does for everybody. So hopefully this information is important to you and relevant for you, and you take something away that you can apply immediately in your day-to-day activities. So here's my contact information, Eric Posa, President and CEO of Copeland Technologies. You can email me at any time with any questions. Do not hesitate to use that email. Even if you're not a customer of ours, even if I don't know you personally, we do take the time to direct people to any sort of contact or help them find a good fit for something that they're having a challenge with. So reach out. We're always here to help in any way we can. And you can always follow me on LinkedIn at Eric Posa. All right, so to start off, very important question. Why is it important to have this conversation about cybersecurity? Obviously, everybody hears about it. We all know about it. It's constantly in our ear, whether that's through news outlets, email, webinars, or anything like that. But most importantly, in your area, your industry, in the medical field, you have a great opportunity here to not only provide outstanding care to patients, okay, but now you have the opportunity with all the technology at hand to do things faster and more real time. You also have the opportunity to provide care and services to people where they are. So individuals that are not comfortable leaving their house, or they're very happy with where they're at, do not like to go to a medical practitioner's office. Those individuals can get the care that they need, and it makes them feel more comfortable. You're able to utilize a lot of information now to make better decisions, to utilize that to augment your services or change your services to hit the people who do need care. And lastly, you have a greater chance of an ongoing commitment of somebody to keep engaged with your services. I personally had an experience recently with this. And I had home care for my mother who was staying with us for 3 weeks after a hospital incident. And it was amazing seeing her engage with the medical practitioner and the tablet that she had for her home care and filling in the logs every day, weighing herself, taking her blood pressure. I've never seen her committed to anything. And when I talked to her about that specifically, it's easy for her. She doesn't have to go anywhere. She's comfortable. So she's more apt to do it, especially in her case. So it's a good thing that we have these different types of technologies available to us. The biggest challenges with new technology and things that are new or we're uncertain of, there's going to be threat and risks. So we have to make sure we mitigate those risks the best that we can, so we can keep providing this good service. The current status today, we know what's going on. There's a war going on, and with that, because of this specific situation, there's definitely an elevated risk of cyber attacks and activity that's happening out there in the cyber environment. We recently, and we do often, but most recently we had a webinar with the FBI. They're providing lots of great information to the community. their biggest number was that 80% of attacks are targeting small to medium businesses. And this stuff is constantly changing and it's constantly out there. So while in the past, 5 to 7 years, we may have been like, cybersecurity, it's kind of a nice to have, not a requirement. I'll take care of this next year. It is no longer something that we can just kick the can down the road with. One question, Imana, do we have the ability to ask questions or do you want me to wait, or questions, or do you want me to wait till the end?
Well, if you want to, just naturally pause wherever you're at and offer the opportunity to ask questions, or if I see a hand raised, then we can just call on anyone at that time. It's just,
Yeah, I would like this to be as interactive as possible. I don't like to hear myself talk straight for 40 minutes or so I'm sure other people don't want to either. So don't hesitate to raise your hand if you do have a question on the topic we're currently discussing. So from what we have, the most frequent types of attacks today, obviously this changes over time. This is not the same list as it was 5 or 10 years ago, and it will not be the same list 6 to 12 months from now because everything's changing so quickly. But the most frequent types, or your biggest threats, are one of 3 things. Email phishing. Email phishing is basically someone trying to impersonate an email sender and trying to collect passwords and gain access to systems. So to summarize it, someone's sending you an email posed as somebody else. They're trying to get you to click, put in a username and password, or in some way gain access to one of your systems. One of the bigger ones that we're seeing a lot of is ransomware. The term ransomware has kind of changed to actually what it means. It used to be, hey, we're gonna encrypt your data and hold you hostage for money. Now it's more along the lines of, we're trying to interrupt your business and leverage that to hold you ransom for monetary compensation. So it used to be, hey, we're just gonna grab just your data. Now they're focusing on how they can shut you down as an operation. And then lastly, we're seeing a lot of these, mostly coming through email. Middleman attacks is what they're called. They're trying to intercept or get in between 2 endpoints of communication, 2 people. They're communicating and somehow collect some sort of monetary compensation. So they're trying to intercept a wire transfer or some sort of bank information, pretend to be somebody in the same organization, or someone that's supposed to be on the email thread, and change something up in their favor. Most importantly, from all of this, what we are still seeing is your user base is the biggest vulnerability. So it's not to be negative. I've seen people who things have happened to, and they're not meaning to do these things. And it actually wasn't even their fault. These criminals, these cyber attackers, are very good at what they do. They spend months and months doing social media reconnaissance. They're trying to find out who you're contacting with, who's in your inner circle, then who's the chief financial officer or somebody like that in your organization. They're spending a lot of time for this one attack. So it's not something that someone was just careless or means to just not care. These are very sophisticated and they're very believable. So the most important thing when things do happen is not to isolate that person or make them feel bad about what happened, because you want people to raise their hands. You want people to say something may have just happened. I don't know what happened, but you need to take a look at this. So it's okay to talk about the fact they may be hacked or someone may be compromised. These things are pretty difficult to find. So we'll get into a little case study. Local organization worked with us about 4 months ago. Very large operation, 3 different sites here in the Western New York area. And they have a new opportunity with their customers, and they have to buy more product from their vendor, okay? They send an email out to their vendor because they have some invoices outstanding, and they say, hey, listen, if we pay this invoice today, can we put an order in the system for X number of quantities of product. Someone on the other side, their vendor, was compromised, saw this email, saw that it was a rush, and saw that it was a payment or transaction type email, intercepted that, and immediately got involved. They emailed this local company directly with a fake domain name that looked kind of like the one that they were emailing to, said, yes, 100%, you can do that. Please, for our immediate wire transfers, use this bank information. That business sent that $225,000 off to an attacker in China, and they never got it back. It is a very big hit. Things like this happen all the time. It may be 5,000, 10,000, 20, or even more. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much it is. It's, you know, we feel vulnerable, and we feel like, we've been just compromised. It's a horrible feeling. So these things are happening. We're hearing about them often. And just to elaborate on that one more step is, we're talking with very intelligent people. So we're not talking like somebody who just doesn't care or is just willy-nilly. We're talking about people who are fully educated. They've received training. These things happen to the smartest of people. So I've talked about the scary stuff. I've hopefully enhanced the notion that you do have to do something. So the question is, and what I usually get is, well, what should I do? There's this big thing of cybersecurity. How do I start? Where do I start? Because I feel overwhelmed. The biggest thing is to sit down with your leadership team and make a commitment to it. Guys, this is something that's very important to us. We have to pay attention to this. We have to get somebody involved. Easiest and the best, most value add thing you can do, cost effective thing for your money, is to get a risk assessment. Have a cybersecurity organization come in, assess your entire organization from a technology standpoint, from a physical security standpoint, locks on the doors, keep fobs, things like that. And then lastly, from a policy standpoint, from a company organizational standpoint. Those three things are going to be evaluated by a cybersecurity professional. And they're going to also, included with that, is a penetration test. They're going to try to ethically hack into your organization. They're going to see if they can get in from the outside. And then they're going to ask for access and see if they do get in, how far and what they can get access to. So they're going to simulate an attack and see what they can do. They're going to come back to you with a report. That report is going to have lots of jargon. It is going to have lots of technical, nerdy stuff that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's going on here with this report. Take that, and you take that to a managed services provider, an IT professional, or your internal IT staff. You review it with them, and you start to come up with a plan. You put a strategy in place. You put timelines and milestones in place. And then you execute. The most important thing is you have to execute. If something happens and somebody comes in and says, show me your commitment to cybersecurity. If you don't have a plan, or if you have a plan with no action, no accountability or anything like that, they're going to assume you don't care, and there will be repercussions for that. If you have a cybersecurity strategy in place, you have milestones, and this thing just happened because things like this do happen, there aren't going to be as many slaps on the wrist. You may not be fined. You may be able to file this with your cybersecurity insurance and be able to actually claim on that. But if you're not paying attention and doing what you need to do, those claims will be ignored, and you will be on an island with your situation. So you got to develop a strategy, and you got to execute on that strategy.
Eric, may I jump in?
Yes, you may.
I think you're covering a lot of ground. I was actually I'm pleasantly surprised to see that you're also talking about business owners insurance and cybersecurity policies. But that making it very clear that, you know, the burden is on us. Okay, even if we're the victims in the end, and there we are at the hands of a breach. So if you don't have these incident response measures in place, then yes, even if you have cybersecurity policy, they can have grounds to disclaim coverage. And they could say, sorry, too bad, so sad, you're going to be on the hook for that. You got to pay for that exposure. So I think what you're saying is all spot on. And it is scary, especially in this current climate, but this is precisely why I'm so grateful that you're here. Thanks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we've actually seen in the past 4 to 6 months, from our customer base, we get these questionnaires for cybersecurity, at least 5 a month. Everybody has this, which is great. They're becoming longer. They used to be 1 page. Now they're 6 pages. Now they're 8 pages. Very detailed questions. So not only are those premiums going up and the deductibles going up, but they're asking you questions about, hey, are you paying attention to this? Do you have this system in place? If something happens, do you have a plan? And they're asking all these questions to make sure that you're an insurable organization. And then secondly, they're actually starting to get into the game, and they have preferred providers of these, which they can recommend to you. So they're saying to you, hey, you got to have these types of systems or procedures in place. These organizations can provide those for you, and you can go to them for a discount. So the cybersecurity insurance, I do recommend having it, but more doesn't necessarily mean better. We are seeing organizations take the bare minimum, take the premium savings, and apply those to different layers of protection. And that's a new thing in the past 6 to 12 months. Does anyone have any questions on that topic? All right, move on.
Hey, Eric, if I could just chime in real quick.
Sure.
You know, when you're explaining the importance of getting a risk assessment, especially with those that have a busy schedule, what do you recommend for somebody to take out of their day? Like, is this a couple of hours? Should they take the whole day and plan for this assessment? And I know everybody's different, but if you could give a rough estimate for a time frame that somebody should dedicate to that.
Absolutely. I'm going to be completely honest and transparent. It is a cumbersome task. It may take weeks. It may take a month. It's something that they're going to sit down with your HR department or your whoever you have deemed as your cybersecurity person, your IT person. They're going to ask to do an on-site walkthrough or at least collect some information there. They're going to give a bunch of forms for you to fill out as far as like a network map. They're going to want to see what type of devices you support in your infrastructure. They're going to ask questions about your Wi-Fi, questions about where all your data is stored, who has your data, who has access, do you have policies, things like that. So it's going to be a good solid month of back and forth. You're probably going to spend a good 10, 12 hours internally on it, but it is something that you can share the brunt of that work with your team.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you're going to get a nice report. That report's going to lay out critical, high, medium, low risk, and they're going to tell you a bunch of things, and you're going to, like I said, gloss over and wonder, what do I do with this? Okay. Once you get that risk assessment, I do recommend having a trusted technology person go through that with you and explain what they're recommending and what they're telling you. So, and the reason is because they're going to take it from a situation where, hey, this is the industry standard. You need to be at this 100% to be compliant. And they're going to give you a list of all these things. Sometimes they are thinking of things in the world of there is no restrictions in money. You can afford all of these things. So you have to, get the most out of your cybersecurity spend, and you have to know what's the most impactful thing that you can do with that spend. So it's important that you go through the list and you come up with a plan based on your budgets, based on your feasibility of actually implementing that sort of technology. and what that all means. So you do need someone to kind of help bring that together for you. And that doesn't have to be a very expensive consultation. So they're gonna have a bunch of terms. This is just kind of like a legend here to say, these are the types of, this is what these things actually are. A gap analysis, they're gonna say industry standard, where you're at, what it's gonna take to meet you two together. Okay, they wanna close the gap on any sort of risks that they see. They're gonna list them all, whether they're small or large. They're gonna talk about awareness training. So awareness training is keeping your users informed on a regular scheduled basis on new threats, reminding them about phishing and other types of phone calls and things like that, other types of threats that are out there, but also testing out your user base, doing a simulation to say, I'm going to send out a bunch of emails and see who clicks. Those services are out there, they're very affordable, and it provides you some good data to see who's more susceptible to these types of situations. One I'm sure you've heard, and you're probably very sick of hearing, I know I am myself, is MFA. MFA, or multi-factor authentication. The easiest way to understand this is it's a way to check who you are, identify who you are based on something you know and something you have. So it's two types of authentication. So it's multiple. That can range from a bunch of things. It's probably always going to be a password or a passphrase. And then it's going to be something else, a text message to you with a code to prove you are who you say you are based on your cell phone. They're going to ask you for a an authentication app. So back in the day, there was the USB dongles that had like the numbers. You would put in the number that would prove who you are. They have that now as an app on your cell phone, very easy to set up. So multi-factor, making sure anytime when someone connects to your systems, they're asked two different ways in which to prove who they are. That's a big one. That is one of the lowest hanging fruits, but the biggest impactful ones you can find, especially for your email. I love this term, BYOD. BYOD, they use it all the time, and they use MDM. BYOD is bring your own device. MDM is mobile device management. BYOD means someone is getting to your systems or accessing their email or some piece of information on their own personal device. If you're an organization that buys cell phones and buys laptops for their staff, this is a good thing. You still need to manage those. That moves into mobile device management. But if you have people getting their email or accessing some sort of information on their mobile device, and it's their personal device, that's a bring your own device policy. And there needs to be control over what happens and how that interaction with your information happens on their personal devices. Mobile device management comes into play 100% in that telehealth world. If you're providing services at someone's home, chances are you're using a tablet that's connected to a data network, and that tablet's got that data has information, sensitive information all over it, and you want to make sure you're controlling that device so that if something does happen, you can protect it, you can wipe it, you can encrypt it. Patch management is another term that comes out very often. Patch management is simply security updates or feature updates to your system. So Microsoft Windows, we all know about that fun update, happens constantly now. It used to be every update Tuesday. Now it's like every day. Making sure those are updated and those updates are going in successfully, and your other applications like Chrome, your browsers, Adobe, other things like that. So you have to be able to demonstrate that those are happening. One of the more complex terms that you'll hear is SIM or log aggregation. Every single device that you have, when things happen on them, creates a log deep inside the guts of the computer. So as you open a file, open a program, access a file on your network, or even log into your computer, your device creates a big event log of all of this stuff happening. A log aggregation system takes all those logs from your PCs, your servers, your networking equipment, your firewalls, printers, anything on the network, takes all of that information, brings that to one central place, and then runs analytics on those, whether through software or a cybersecurity team. And what they're looking for is anomalous behavior, things that are happening in the logs that don't look normal. For example, a user that was in your system that was disabled suddenly becomes enabled, and then now they have admin privileges. That's not a usual thing to happen. So grabbing those logs and having those analyzed will bring to light some sort of attacker on your network sooner. With that type of solution, it's a little more costly, but it does provide a great level of protection. You'll hear the term a SOC, which is SOC. It's a Security Operations Center. Easy way to think of it, a group of nerds and geeks that provide guidance on your cybersecurity. It's not taboo anymore to call someone in the computer industry a geek or a nerd, so we actually wear it proudly. So it's a group of people, have a 24/7 SLA. They're responding, they're looking at those logs, they're running analytics on those logs, and then they're reaching out to you to say, this is a problem, this is our recommendation to remediate this situation, and they help you go through the event. Backup and DR. DR is short for disaster recovery. To summarize this is, if there is some sort of event, something does happen, what is your backup strategy and how do you recover from that type of event? They'll talk in terms of recovery time objective. How soon does your organization have to be online before it becomes cost prohibitive or business prohibitive? And then they'll talk about recovery point objective. If you have to go back to a snapshot of your data, how far back can you go before it becomes business prohibitive? So for example, if I have an event today, if I have to go back to last week Friday's backup, is that bad or is that okay? If I have an event today and I'm not back online until next Tuesday, is that acceptable or not acceptable? And it's different for every company. So going through that exercise, talking about those things, what kind of impact every application that you use has on your business, those types of things all come together and they're put together as part of a backup and disaster recovery strategy.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Daniel.
What is your recommendation for password change timeframes? How often should passwords be required to be changed?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So depending on what types of passwords you have, you definitely have to have a password strength requirement in your policy. Your passwords can be one of two things. They can be a password, which is just like a 12. I would recommend 12 as the minimum, 12 to 16, uppercase, lowercase, all that fun stuff, password, or you can use a passphrase. So using a password, I would recommend changing those every 90 days, unfortunately. If you have like a 16 character, I would go 180 days, that's perfectly okay. If you're doing a passphrase, once a year is perfectly acceptable. So if you were to have, for me, I'm a hockey guy. If you have a passphrase, capital I, love the game of hockey, exclamation point. That is something that is very difficult to crack. It's got spaces in there. It's got special characters, all that fun stuff. You can utilize that and change that. I would say still yearly for those. And I totally get it. I hate changing my password, even for an IT person. I use LastPass as a password management tool. It's fantastic. It's free. Or if you pay $50 a year, it's actually got advanced features. One of the best features in that is if something were to happen to me and my wife or my family needed my password, they can get into my systems and find passwords for things I have listed there. So
Can you repeat that last part?
absolutely. It's called LastPass, LASTPASS.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It has a browser plugin, so it can remember, it can generate passwords for you. It automatically updates when you change it. Really, really helpful, very, very secure. Just don't give anybody your master password. That's something you definitely want to keep confidential.
Got it. Thank you.
You can group those up by like, I got them grouped up by my kids, business, personal. It's very, very important. And it's an app on my phone too, which is great. Someone posted something in the chat. I'm just going to check that out really quick. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
Eric, I have a question about those password managers.
Absolutely.
Is it possible that somebody could get your master password by, I think it's called key logging?
Absolutely. Yep. They
So
can.
how do you prevent that?
Great segue. Thank you very much, Bonnie. The last point here is endpoint detection. So antivirus today, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you with the lesson in antivirus, but someone writes a virus, it becomes known. A virus definition is created by the powers that be that basically says, if you see these things happen in this order or somewhat in this order, it's a virus and this is the virus it is, and this is how you stop it. That definition propagates down to all the antivirus programs, and now you are aware, your computer is aware of that virus. The challenge with that is it's not smart enough to detect keyloggers, 0-day attacks, which is like someone that puts something on your computer that happens someday in the future. It's not intelligent enough to know about those because there's no definition for that. There's all different ways somebody can do that. So an endpoint detection and response application, which is smarter than antivirus, does recognize key logging applications and threats on that side. Your LastPass application will definitely have some higher levels of scrutiny when it comes to logging in. That's why I would make your LastPass password, say that quickly 5 times, make that password something completely unique, and it will yell at you if you have that as the same password. Make that completely unique from any other password that you have. That way, the only time you're logging into that is when you're going into that master password. It'll reduce that risk.
Eric, I have a question.
Yes.
It was actually sent to me within the chat. So is there any way that a practice can run a test to scan for breaches themselves?
I don't know of any test that says, hey, yes, you were breached, but there's a lot of scans that you can run. Number one is a vulnerability scan. And what that scan is going to do is it's going to say, hey, what's on your network? And it's going to compare what's on your network and its status of all the devices with an industry standard database. So all these devices, hey, is this thing patched? What operating system is this running on? Is your printer have a bad firmware? Is a port open on this firewall? It's going to scan all that and produce a report. That's a very, very standard thing. We provide that. Cybersecurity companies provide that. You can do it continuously, or you can do it quarterly, semi-annual, or yearly. In that situation, I wouldn't go any less than every 6 months because things are changing so much. I would at least have it twice a year. Those are a little more affordable because a lot of that work is done through a system or a program as opposed to people, so it's less money.
One more thing to piggyback off of that, Eric. So would you characterize a risk assessment as a more proactive approach than just trying to look and scan to see if there were any breaches? Will the risk assessment put them in, a position where they can get in front of it before there's a breach?
So there's 3 parts to that answer. One, yes, a risk assessment is going to show you vulnerabilities or risk in your organization, whether how you're conducting business or the systems you have in place. It's a snapshot in time. So things are changing constantly. So the other 2 parts to that is having ongoing monitoring of those logs. We talked about the log aggregation tool. That's a great way to see if weird stuff is happening on your network that you don't know about. The industry standard as of last year, I have to update my stats, was 180 days before you know someone's on your network. A log aggregation tool usually can figure that out within a few days max. Some of these have 2-hour SLAs. So you can know quickly if someone's doing something strange, and you can get in front of that before the scope becomes too big. The last thing is endpoint protection. So the log aggregation is after the fact, after things are happening, collects all those logs and then analyzes them. Endpoint detection is up at the front, stopping things from coming in.
Eric, how do you know if the antivirus suite you're using does the endpoint detection and response?
The best way is to ask the person who's providing that to you, or you can just email me what you're using, and we can look it up for you.
Okay.
Yeah, whoever's providing that, I would definitely look at who's providing that and make sure, number one, it does have the level of protection you think it has, or you want it to have. But secondly, it has to be managed. So the days of having your computer only have antivirus running and no one else knows about what's happening is over. You have to have some sort of central hub where all the information comes to, and that should be your managed services provider or your IT department. So they should be able to pull up for you on your screen, here's all your devices, here's the last known virus for this device, this is the status of this application, if it's been updated recently, things like that. It's very common now. They shouldn't, if you ask somebody to show me this information and they struggle for it, it's not a good thing. They should be able to just bring it right up.
Eric, I have a question directly in the chat. So the individual is asking whether or not there's a number that anyone can call to ask any questions relating to this. And I think it's important to note that you have been, the exclusive IT vendor to the Med Society for the last 7 years. So perhaps you'll have a greater understanding as to what additional considerations clinical practices have to have. But is there any general number that they can call if they have questions?
To me directly? Yes, I absolutely. You can email or call. I know some people are against the email thing. I totally get it. There's times I wish I just didn't have email. You can reach us at this number here. My personal extension is 307, but anybody can direct you to us. And the most important thing to realize from these calls, I don't want you to hesitate because you feel you'll be sold to. This is not what this is about. There's two important things from this. Number one is there's a lot of people's information, data, and small businesses in this community that are at risk here. And anything we can do to mitigate that, we will point you in the right direction. Number two, we're talking about healthcare. We're talking about people's well-being, their happiness, those types of situations. Any way that we can help someone be healthier and happier, by all means, I'm on board. So
and Eric, that's why the threshold is so high for them, because honestly, now that telehealth is here to stay, there are very few things you can think of that are more discreet and confidential and held private than a patient-physician, doctor appointment. So to think that there could be a compromise to that, a breach to that, yeah, that's why the standard is held so high for clinicians or practices, to make sure that better make sure you've got that buttoned up, because that could be serious. We're not just talking about HIPAA data. We're talking about someone being in that space and something that, is very, very discreet.
Yeah, we need you in business. We need you up and operating. We can't have your practices be down where people are getting sicker. They're not getting the care they need. It's very impactful. So it is your responsibility, and it's our responsibility as a whole to provide this service to our community. So that's a joint action. Any way we can help, I promise you, I will make sure that you get the help you need.
And Eric, that's why we appreciate you so much. And they all, of course, know that we're a nonprofit, and that's really our mission, is to just, make sure that we safeguard the public, enhance outcomes. I will say, imagining, God forbid, there were a breach, I'd be less inclined to go to that provider, especially like that now everyone's doing telehealth. If I felt like I found out that there was some kind of breach, because there are mandatory, reporting requirements to tell folks who been breached, right? From a HIPAA violation standpoint, if I found out, I wouldn't go to that practice. So I think that it's also important from even a business standpoint, as the head of the, because we have Bobby Binner here. She is the head of billing over at Excel Laboratories. We have, of course, Dan Strauch, who's very influential in MGMA Buffalo chapter. So these are important considerations from a business standpoint too. Thanks.
Absolutely. I ask when I go in and I fill out a form, I say, well, what are you doing with that form? Oh, we keep it in files. If I look and I see a big shelf full of files right there, I'm going to say, you know, what are you doing with that stuff? Like, is that locked, that door? Like it's, I mean, it sounds like I'm being judgmental, but you have to be just like in healthcare, you have to be your own advocate. You got to be your own advocate in the protection of your data as well. So they're going to start asking, and you're going to see the requirements coming through. One thing I want to make very, very clear, you will never be 100% secure. Just ask Home Depot, Target, Equifax, everybody, okay? This stuff will happen. The most important thing that you can do is add layers of protection to mitigate the scope of what's happening. So instead of losing out on 100,000 patient records, maybe 5 of them are compromised, 10 of them are compromised. And you have a way to look to see what was actually compromised from your logs. That way you can fix it before it gets out in the open, and you're narrowing down the scope of that event. So kind of like just to summarize, I'm sorry about the typo here. I am horrible when it comes to putting together PowerPoints. It is not my thing. Implement a cybersecurity program, get something in place, get a plan together, work on that risk assessment, and put a plan together, get some dates written down. We want to have these things. We want to talk about these things by, June 30th, end of the year, something like that, and execute that plan. Typos right here, password policies. Make sure that you're talking about your password policies. Make sure that they're automated. Make sure they're pumping out to everything that you touch. Continuous user training is huge. Like I said earlier, it's still the biggest vulnerability of your organization is your people. Utilize encryption whenever sending sensitive data or housing sensitive data, making sure those hard drives are encrypted. Your mobile devices, there's ways to force encryption there. Have that in place and protect that data in transit. Obviously, lock rooms, server cabinets, and upgrade old equipment. Just a quick snapshot. I think 35 years ago, we had a customer called us up one day. Hey, we can't get to the business system. I'm like, okay, we'll go, power it off, power it on. They're like, where is it? I'm like, you should be standing right in front of it. It's right at your feet. And it's not. So someone actually got in through the window and just took off with their server. So that's a very, very extreme case. But these things happen. People go into their office with a USB dongle and they download data, or they unintentionally add a virus or something to the network by putting in a USB dongle. So these things are happening. Invest in email and firewall advanced protection. So ask the questions. What are we using for our firewall? Your firewall is basically, think of a firewall as a big brick wall between you and the internet. And a firewall has the ability to open up ports, which are, think of bricks in your wall. There's standard ones for your web traffic. There's standard ones for your email. As systems get more complicated, sometimes vendors require ports and bricks to be removed from that wall. That just opens up the ability for someone to get in or see what's going on. So make sure you're talking to them about your firewall. Third-party patching we talked about earlier. Advanced scanning and endpoint protection. If I'm coming into your organization completely just blind as to what you're doing, and I say you need to spend money, the first thing is that risk assessment, because you don't know what you don't know. You got to have someone tell you what you don't know. Secondly, obviously I would address any little stuff that you can do quickly or at a low cost, but I would make sure you can recover from something. So something is going to happen at some day, you have to make sure that that first step is taken, that you can recover. How do we recover from an incident? Then when you get that in place, you can move on to these other advanced things based on your specific need. Here are some tools to help. You can go to our website, check out our blog. We're putting some content up there. There's a stay up to dates on our website where we send out newsletter emails. We're starting to do more of that now. We're putting stuff on LinkedIn, and it's not sales material. It's just informational. The thing that we just recently put out there was on the cybersecurity insurance and what we're seeing. So there was a video put out there. Check it out. All information is good information.
Eric, may I ask that, you make me one of your contacts possibly for your newsletter so that when I see things like that come in, I can email blast it out to our members,
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I apologize in advance if it's my face constantly on these videos. I don't like doing them, but they're necessary. So we're trying to use video more because it's like 1 minute of your time, and hopefully it's a little more thorough and explanatory than just text. Just follow us on social media and LinkedIn. We're trying to put as much information out there. Again, as a collective effort, it's our job to lift our community up, and any way we can do that, that's our goal.
Eric, could you please comment on VPNs and whether a VPN should always be used whenever you're accessing the internet?
Yes. So just a quick background on VPN. Think of VPN as you have a network cable, which you use to connect to, any sort of network, and it's really long and it takes you all the way to your office and you're plugging it in. So you're, in a sense, taking your device that's miles and miles away from your office and putting it on the network at your office. VPN takes a little tunnel and puts it around your information and kind of protects it from anyone getting in on it as it's transferring back and forth. So it's very important to use VPN anytime a device is connecting to your network. The other thing VPN does is, let's say you're at a coffee shop or you're in a hotel, you're on a network that is shared by a bunch of people, and they can very easily see what you're doing. It's incredibly easy to see what you're doing. So using a service like ExpressVPN, I think it's $100 a year, possibly. I think there's some other free tools out there. VPN in or connect in through VPN to their service and then access things, and it will make sure that your data is encapsulated in that tunnel. But 100%, anytime a device is connecting to your network, you want a tunnel established.
Eric, when I send out the recording of this webinar, would it be okay to reference ExpressVPN and LastPass maybe in the body of the email so that folks who couldn't attend, have some resources to go to?
I don't mind personally. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. I don't know what the ramifications of doing that. I can't imagine it's negative, but I have no problem. It's something that anyone can get. LastPass is one of the top password management tools out there. You don't need a reseller. You don't have to go through us for it. ExpressVPN, same thing. So yeah, I would list that as an example of a tool.
Yeah, just to let folks know or be aware of this. I think these are great resources and they're so affordable, if not free, and I had no idea about them. May I ask you a question about something you mentioned, I think 2 slides ago? You mentioned a USB. So somebody comes in with a USB. So does that create exposure? Like, does that create the possibility of what? A virus or somebody coming in and breaching? Because that's not something I was aware of.
So think of someone at home. You don't know anything about their home device, right? And they plug in a USB key or dongle, they download stuff, they put it on there. There's no scan. There may not be any scanning. There may be some scanning going on at home. They bring them, they connect that to a PC, and they copy that data onto that computer. Whatever you're getting, whatever they're putting on there. So a lot of times we'll have policies in place that say lock out the ability to utilize a device like that. Because in today's world, it's very seldom you need that, and we can always give access. It's always best to restrict it first and then open it up if the need is there, than it is to pull back the reins. One thing I did want to mention on a personal note, especially for all of you, I'm definitely a big proponent of LifeLock with Norton. It's like a personal identity theft and protection service. I have it for myself. I have it for my kids. I'm not selling it. I'm not reselling it. I make no money on it. They have found a lot of things over the past few years that have really protected me. And it's just basically identity protection watch. I pay, I think it's $35 a month for me. I think my kids are $6 a month. And at the end of the day, it's better than any insurance policy that I've had to protect against your identity. Some service like that, I would definitely recommend looking into. Any other questions? All right.
Eric, can you just briefly comment too on printers and scanners and any risks associated with those and the proper disposal of those?
Yes, there are, there's a couple different like variations of those devices. If you're talking a copier multifunction, if you're doing any sort of saving of information on those hard drives, scanning and storing, those have to be destroyed when they leave your facility. Absolutely, and the copier providers should be doing that for you. That should be part of their service. Regular printers, smaller devices are not as big of a threat, but they are just because of the fact they have a connection to your network. Chances of someone getting in through a PC versus a printer is definitely more likely to happen on the PC side of it because there's more options. But those devices do have to be updated and patched at least yearly. If you're scanning just to see if there's vulnerabilities or better firmware, 100% scan them and get them patched.
Thanks, Eric. This is very, very good webinar. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate that.
I would like to echo Bonnie's sentiment. This was great, Eric. I actually am hoping that there could be maybe a part 2 down the road. And would it be okay if in addition to sending this webinar via recording, that we also can share the slide deck with folks just so that they have a quick go-to?
First, let me fix the one typo. Is it okay if I also have the person in their organization who loves slides kind of go through it, because I didn't have her look at it before I did, and she's probably gonna be upset. So she can make it look a lot better. I would like some feedback if there's specific topics that you want to discuss on a part 2, 100%.
And so all these members communicate with me too. So if you want to just also give me, maybe confer back with your staff and then give me, in light of what you're going to share from this PowerPoint, a list of follow-up questions that maybe Eric can, provide more information on in terms of his next webinar, please. I say we make this a regular thing. This was, very, very informative. And I actually, Eric, I thought your slide deck was also spot on. So thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's just very primitive, I would say. I will be at the golf outing on Monday. So if anyone wants to swing by and say hi if they're golfing, it would be great to meet you in person.
I'll be there.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Have a great day.
Thank
Good job,
you, Eric.
Eric. Good job.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye-bye.